Travis Wingoodsell. I really wanted to get to part 2 yesterday, but came up with part 2, or part 1, a little too late in the day. But as I was reviewing it for part 2, I came across, let's see, which chapter? 16 is it? Yep. The ending, verse 16, or chapter 16 of Judges. Samson carries away doors of gate of Gaza. He loves Delilah, who delivers him to the Philistines. Delivers? Bruce, what are you saying? Bruce R. McConkie, in the first editions of the footnoted Mormon scriptures, was the one who put in all of the chapter headings. That's the one thing that the church did, was have one person, Bruce R. McConkie, do all the chapter headings. So unlike the footnoting, which was done by many different people from several different committees, well, it wasn't like the committees that I was involved in. It was a different process because it was the first time they were doing it. But the second time around, they said we need to establish certain guards to protect from what errors were made in the first time around. But yeah, Bruce R. McConkie did all of the chapter headings. So this is Bruce's speculation. Bruce is not as smart as everyone thinks he is, and I'm going to show you from this chapter heading, not just because he covers up Delilah's guilt in this. Delilah is an evil woman. Evil woman. Evil woman. Is that ELO? She didn't deliver him to the Philistines. She betrayed him to the Philistines. But then he says, Bruce R. McConkie says, he destroys building. Building, Bruce? What building? Killing himself and 3,000 others. What building, Bruce? Please tell us what building. He doesn't tell us the building. Either he doesn't know, but I think he does, and he's purposely not telling us, because the text does not tell us directly. You have to understand from the story what building. I will hopefully get to it, but that's why I added the Salt Lake Temple door with the inverted pentagram above it, with my other inverted pentagram, the Nauvoo Temple with the inverted pentagram, and the Seagull Gate at Temple Square with the inverted pentagram. Because Bruce R. McConkie's not going to tell you, so I'm going to tell you, hopefully in this video, if we can get to it within an hour. But that's the ending of the story, and I'm going to talk about it. And remember, let me again give you another clue, Mormons. Remember, I'm Mormon. I gave you the picture in the first one of me with my wedding at the Salt Lake Temple, where I had my wedding feast at the Lion House next to the Beehive House. I'm Mormon. But because I'm critical of the church does not mean I'm anti-Christ, anti-Mormon. We should be anti-Mormon, actually, because the prophecy. But I was punked just like the rest of you. We were led to believe that the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is the true and living church on the face of the earth and the true succession of Joseph Smith. We were lied to. We were deceived. We were punked. And the inverted pentagram is the clue I've been doing lately to try to remind you of this. And so again, let me remind you, before you run away and say, oh, this is anti-Mormon stuff, I'm not going to listen to it, because I know better. You do not want to dismiss my videos. I have knowledge that you will never find anywhere else. This is not some hyperbole of mine, some Messiah complex grandeur thing. This is literal. I deciphered Paleo-Hebrew. I went over it with Manoah, the father of Samson. I'm going to be covering it with Samson from my being the decipherer of Paleo-Hebrew. You do not want to dismiss my words just because I'm speaking negatively about the church. Again, the prophecies clearly repeat over and over and over and over and over again, like the passage in Amos, that there must be a famine of the word before the coming of Christ. There must be an apostasy. The church must be in apostasy. Not just the government, the church, because in our day, during the fulfillment of all the prophecies are prophesying about this Christ in the latter days. The Jews do not accept Jesus of the Gospels as the Christ. First, they already have a God. They don't need another God. They're not looking for God. They're looking for the prophesied Christ, which Jeremiah specifically informs the Jews and anyone else who reads it and accepts the words of Jeremiah of someone who is like Moses, a man like Moses who saves the Jews and the house of Israel. Just like Moses saved the tribe of Judah and all the tribes of Israel. Remember, 13 tribes, not 12 tribes. Ephraim and Manasseh are the double portion of Joseph, 13 tribes. And so, yes, the Gospels, therefore, because it is not the true Christ of whom the Jews are looking for, and therefore should not be the Christ whom the Christians should be looking for, and therefore should not be the Christ whom Mormons are looking for. Remember, Mormons, what is the name of Jesus given by Joseph Smith? Amen. In Adamon, Diamon. Amen. That's the name of the Father. What is the name of the Son of Ammon that Joseph Smith gave to us? That's in the Doctrine and Covenants in 2 places. Son Ammon. Father Ammon, Son Ammon. See, this is how badly the current church has taken us away from the truth. We're in apostasy, and they've purposely covered up the truth. They've purposely lied to us. They're purposely trying to turn us into Christian, which is not Christian. And so That's why it's important to understand the truth about the scriptures, because they all are prophecies. They're not histories. Samson was not a real person. He did not exist. It's a prophecy of the future Christ. The Gospels are not a history. They're placed in a historical context in the Roman period, just like Samson was placed in the period where they were trying to figure out what happened between Moses and even Joshua, which they had to place after Moses, so that Joshua could then explain what happened to justify how the kings during the time of Assyria that get conquered and taken into Assyria, how they came to be. And so yes, the Jews are confused as to their history because of the authors who incorrectly wrote the history, trying to create a scenario in which the Jews were the restored kingdom of David. Nope, you weren't saved, were you? So, nope, that's not the restored kingdom of Judah or Israel, because they weren't saved. You're looking for someone else, just as Christians are looking for someone else, because Jesus didn't save Judah. In fact, it was very much the contrary. The Jews were slaughtered by the Romans. They did not get saved by a Christ. And then Constantine comes along, creates an idol god. He's now Homoousius. And so all the pagans, even the Roman pagans, get conformed into the Homoousius god of Constantine at the Nicene Council. So Joseph Smith, what did he have to say about this? If he called Jesus son Ammon, shouldn't son Ammon be coming? No. You're not reading your scriptures. I'll have to come back to Samuel here. Section 103, verse 16. Therefore, because in 15 he says, Behold, I say unto you, the redemption of Zion must needs come by power. What is the redemption of Zion? It's the restoration of the kingdom of David. But wait a minute, didn't Joseph do that? No. Why didn't he do that? He died. He failed to save the Jews. So even the Jews don't recognize Joseph Smith as the Messiah, as the Christ, even though Joseph was trying to present himself as such a person. Remember the Kirtland Temple, where Elijah comes during Passover, giving him the keys? He was trying to let people know in the Mormon church, I'm the Christ, I'm the Messiah. And then he dies, he fails. But Joseph Smith knew he was going to die, and that it's going to be a future Mormon. Therefore, I will raise up unto my people. A Mormon, a man. A Mormon, my people, who shall lead them, the Mormons, as Moses. A man like Moses led the children of Israel. You must be led out of bondage. We're supposed to be in apostasy. He's prophesying here. Joseph Smith is prophesying that the Mormons will be in bondage, not just to America, but to the church who murders Joseph and takes over control of it. The church of Lucifer, the great and abominable church. The Church of Lucifer has the symbol of the inverted pentagram. Now you're starting to understand why I'm emphasizing the inverted pentagram on the Mormon temples after Joseph was murdered. And yes, Samson prophesies of this. Because Bruce R. McConkie isn't going to tell us which building he brings down. And by the way, the author of that Samson story, just like the author of the gospel story, sort of screwed up by saying that these guys died. No, the last days Christ is not supposed to die. He's supposed to succeed and restore the kingdom of David. Save the Jews, save the house of Israel from the coronavirus. Moses? Coronavirus? Creeping death of Metallica? Come on, people. This is why I'm so desperate to get somebody to listen. Alright. So are we ready to go to 2? Because I'm having to cram everything into these videos, which is why I can't just go right to Samson and say this is this and that is that. Where does that come from? That's a cartoon. I can't remember. That's funny. Alright. So back to Samson. Burn his wife. Samson has 2 wives. Just like Moses had 2 wives. I wonder if the prophecy means you're looking for a Christ with 2 wives. Not at the same time, mind you, because that's polygamy. Okay. Oh. Yeah, Noah and his wife. So, from chapter 1, I go over the Paleo-Hebrew of Manoah. So refer to that, because I'm not going to repeat it here. And we have the angel Gabriel, who's again, well, this is near the beginning. This is supposed to be after Abraham, with Gabriel saying, hey, your wife's pregnant now. You couldn't get her pregnant, so now she's pregnant. And so the same angel is now with Manoah's wife, who has been barren all these decades. You're pregnant now. Surprise. And Mary, the mother of Jesus, surprise, you're pregnant now. And Elizabeth, surprise, you're pregnant now. And if you don't understand, because you're not watching all my videos, remember the Magna earthquake? Remember Magna means strong? Remember Gabriel? I went over that with you. The God of strength. God is strong. Gabriel. Gabriel means strong. And so, when the Moroni statue on the top of the Salt Lake Temple loses his horn, he's no longer giving the warning message to all the world, is he? Instead, what replaced him? The angel Gabriel replaced him. And who is the angel Gabriel? He's the one that announces the coming of Christ. Oh, yeah, I was going over that with you guys. When the Magna earthquake struck. It was from God, even though the other ones after were most likely caused because of the Kennecott mining. Alrighty, so Let's see. Manoah said to his wife, "We shall surely die because we have seen God." But his wife said unto him, notice God? Wait a minute, wasn't it an angel? Do you see what they've done here? Ammon. I went over this in the first one. Ammon is the god, thanks to Hatshepsut, who comes to the queen, condescends to come to the queen in her chambers, and conceives immaculately. Though the Book of Mormon says, no, he has sex with her. So we're not Christian. And produces son Ammon, who is to restore the kingdom of his father, the first king, who likewise, his mother was conceived by Ammon, and so on and so forth. So the king represents Father Ammon, because it's not God coming to the queen, they're just symbolically reenacting this prophecy. And so Ammon as the king, who is son Ammon at birth, son becomes the father, father becomes the son. Marlon Brando from Superman. and so the father and the son have the exact same name. So yes, Mormons, when the Book of Mormon has Lehi, that's in Samson here, Lehi gives a blessing to his son Joseph and says, in the future there will be a restoring Messiah who is named Joseph, whose father is named Joseph. But then they throw in a verse at the end saying, and then there will be another one, just as a backup in case the first one dies and fails to fulfill the prophecy. And so yes, in the coming of the Christ to America, the United States specifically, because where was the Book of Mormon dug up as gold plates in Egyptian? Yes, in America. Jesus makes Nephi the king, the Christ, the Messiah. Jesus doesn't hang around. He just comes down from outer space, makes Nephi the king, and leaves for the millennial reign of peace for the Nephites, which was only 400 years. And who's his father? Nephi. Nephi, son of Nephi, becomes the king of the Nephites for the millennium. And what did that Jesus say was necessary for Nephi to have? The records of Samuel the Lamanite, who prophesied of signs in the heavens and other things. See, you Mormons get all upset with those who identify plagiarism in the Book of Mormon. You get so anti-Christ-like. Literally. I mean, if you're getting angry with people because they identify truth, what does that make you, Mormons? I know this is hard for you to hear. I'm Mormon. I found out the truth. Joseph Smith, good. Brigham Young, bad. And it has to be in order for the prophecy to be fulfilled. And so, understand this. We're not going to get to the building, are we? We're at 25 minutes in. Okay, so they're concerned. They saw the face of God. And his wife said, if the Lord were pleased to kill us, he would have done so already. He would not have received a burnt offering and a meat offering at our hands. Now, where would they have done the burnt offering and meat offering? Now it says that Manoah took a kid, back in verse 19, with a meat offering, and offered it upon a rock unto the Lord. The author is trying to create a scenario to explain the gap between Moses and Joshua, which was also a gap to explain what happened after Moses, before King David, not understanding that King David is the time of Moses, the David Moseses of the 18th dynasty, which again restored the kingdom of the previous King David before them. And that's why they were called the David Moseses, is that they were restoring the kingdom of David. And so they had temples scattered throughout the land, even in Israel, as well as I'm neglecting the name of them, not synagogues, shrines. They had shrines where they didn't have the full big temples. And so shrines were places where the locals could go and offer up offerings unto the idol god statue on the rock of the altar in the shrine. They were miniature temples of the Holy of Holies. And so when they say that, so Manoah took a kid, which is a goat, with a meat offering, and offered it upon a rock unto the Lord. That's the shrine. Again, this isn't history, and so the author is not understanding what was going on in the land in the time period he's talking about. But that would have been a shrine had it been an actual history. And so this is the prophecy, is that there are temples, and again, where was Mary when the angel Gabriel came to her? Oh, right, it's not in the Gospels, is it? It was left out of the Gospels and therefore called pseudepigraphic, because it's fake. Because it's not authorized by the Catholic Church. So yes, Mary was a temple worker. A 14-year-old girl temple worker, brand new. She also was brought to the temple as a child, similar to Samuel, was brought to the temple, and as other prophecies are similar to that effect. She was dedicated to temple service to the Lord. And so here they are, going to the temple, and at the temple they see an angel who announces, "You're pregnant." And not understanding the cultural history of the time period also, that's where you went to have sex, was at the temple. So Samuel had Eli with his two sons, and there's an incident where the two sons are chastised for having sex with females in another room of the temple. And it goes right over everybody's head, because they don't understand the practice of the time period that is being discussed, which again, it's not an actual history. Samuel was not an actual person, because they're trying to create a prophecy for the coming of the Christ, who's to restore the kingdom of David. But it wasn't the Jewish kings. The Israelite kings were not the restored kingdom of David, because they failed to save people. And so This is the understanding you need to have of the prophecies. As you combine all the prophecies together to say, who am I looking for? When am I looking for him? And where am I looking for him? And yes, it's now clear, America, the United States, is where he's coming. And as I just went over with Joseph Smith, he's Mormon. And so these are the symbols you're looking for. You're looking for someone who has parents who have been to the temple for their sealing. That's the current practice. They're using the ancient practice to prophesy about the future coming of the Christ. So you're looking for a Mormon whose parents were sealed in the temple of the Philistines. They don't tell you that because they want to tell you that everything's fine. But the author says the house of Israel were evil again. That's right at the beginning of the story, the very first line that I went over with you. They're evil again. And so these are the symbols you're looking for. And flame went up toward heaven from the altar, and the angel of the Lord ascended in the flame of the altar. Similar to a pillar of light, like the first vision. Alright, Manoah and his wife looked on it, fell to the ground, their faces to the ground, and the angel of the Lord appeared, no more appeared. So they thought they were going to die because they saw the face of God. Wait a minute, God? I thought it was an angel. But again, that's the symbol. Is the Father represents Amen, Heavenly Father, who has sex with the woman, the queen. And remember, Mormons, in the temple, what is the initiatories for? Washing and anointings. What is the word anoint in Greek? Christ. What is the word anoint in Hebrew? Messiah. Exactly. We become kings and queens to the Most High God, hereafter to rule and reign in the house of Israel forever. And yes, high priest and high priestess as well. Melchizedek's. Pharaohs. It was Pharaoh who went to Abraham paid tithes. No, it wasn't tithes, it was tribute, because he had conquered the king who had kidnapped Lot. And so he gave tribute to Pharaoh, who was called Melchizedek, because Pharaoh ruled over the land of Israel. Alright. And so, yeah, today is a day of Memorial Day, remembering the deaths of those who fought for freedom. And we're adding for coronavirus. And so, yes, Samson sort of saves, doesn't really save. The Jewish author messes up the ending. Alright, so she now bears a son, having gone to the temple, having got pregnant, because the messenger said she was pregnant, and called his name Samson. Now this is where my Paleo-Hebrew comes, where you shouldn't have shut me down, and so if you've shut me down saying he's Antichrist, I'm not listening to a thing he's saying. Oops, you're lost. I warned you. And there it is. I've already done it in another video, but I have to keep repeating this because you guys are new to these videos. very few of my regulars have gone back to remember everything that I've talked about. I've got over a terabyte of information in videos on YouTube. Samson. It's not the 3-letter Hebrew word, is it? And it's not the 2-letter with a 3rd-letter determinative, like I told you in part 1, for Paleo-Hebrew. And I gave you the clue in the first one about the nun. That I gave you a hint or a clue. I didn't go into it fully. What I recognized when I deciphered Paleo-Hebrew as the script, I then proceeded to work on investigating the vocabulary to confirm the script that I deciphered. And what I discovered with the theory test of the 3-letter vocabulary words, yeah, I'll show you. Hang on. These were on top of the pile, so it was easier to get to. Though yesterday I had a cramp in my thigh, and so I'm still suffering the effects of that today. Alright, this is all my research into the vocabulary of Paleo-Hebrew. I finally got around to publishing it with Amazon because it's free. The only problem is that my dad destroyed my original font that I used for this, and so when it came up on the new computers that I have, it didn't translate the font very well, and so I had to put a key in the beginning of this to correct the problems. So you can see the key that I put in there. Very devastating, because I knew how long it took me to make these, to run the test. Just tragic. So this is the first thing I did before I did the test was reconstruct Brown, Driver, and Briggs's Hebrew English lexicon. Every single Hebrew word was devoweled. That's my word because I deciphered Paleo-Hebrew, and in order to decipher and discover what the vocabulary functioned as, it was necessary to take out all the added vowels. So Samson is not S-A-M-S-O-N. The A and the O are gone from the original spelling of the word in Hebrew and in Paleo-Hebrew. And so it's Samson. But yeah, you can add whatever vowels you want, but Simpsons have P in there, whereas this has no P. My first X was a Thompson without the P, and they had jokes about how they didn't have P. And so I have a 3rd letter prefix determinative vocabulary theory test, a 3rd letter suffix determinative vocabulary theory test, and these are the small ones. This was the smaller version. The whole complete ones were the first ones that I did, the 3-letter Hebrew vocabulary test. This is the thick book, and as you can see, this is how I rendered it. Each 3-letter word with the 2-letter and the 1-letter, doing both the prefix and the suffix. And so this is the abbreviated version, just the suffix as the determinative, because that's what I discovered in this test, was that there are determinatives. And so I ran the test for the determinatives. And then this is the complete Hebrew vocabulary theory test, and this is in color. As you can see the red in that one. And that's to show you that I am authorized to inform you as to the meaning of Manoah, as I did in the last video, and Samson in this one. We can see, as others have also recognized, but they didn't decipher Paleo-Hebrew as I did. They recognize SMS as the word for son in Hebrew, Shemesh. Now, you're saying Shemesh is not Semes. It's phonetically the same. You got to understand, Aramaic is different than Hebrew, and that's why there's the confusion. With Vav and Va and Wa, it depends on which language you're referring to for the phonemes. But the root is the picture script. And so the phonemes I don't even bother with. It's the word for son. It's the same letters. And so there you have sun, the sun in the sky, not the son who's born of the father. But again, I've already gone over this. Ammon has sex with the queen, gives birth to Ammon the son, who replaces Ammon the father when he becomes king. So, son. Jesus is said to be the son of the highest. Highest what? Highest sun in the sky. Son, as a child, of the highest sun. Ammon, son Ammon. Father Ammon, son Ammon. Father becomes the son, son becomes the father. And so what about this N at the end? The nun, or nu, in Paleo-Greek. As I told you, Paleo-Hebrew is not Semitic. And I went over that in another video that I did recently. And so, nu, or nun, again, you can refer to Psalms 119 for the Hebrew pronunciation. But if you know your Greek, you'll know the comparable to Paleo-Hebrew. And so I tend to want to name it according to the Greek, but the Greeks didn't name it until the Greek period in 300 BC. And so we have the N at the end of the sun. You notice how they call Solomon King Solomon, even though he has the N at the end? That's a redundancy, because the N is the symbol from Egyptian characters of the crown of northern Egypt, with the little snake, cobra snake, in the center of the forehead for the all-seeing eye that we've handed down through degradation of de-evolution of the concept, and we call it witchcraft now, the all-seeing eye. But you remember the Greeks? They had the Cyclops? Yeah. Prophecy, but that's what the snake in the forehead of the pharaohs was all about. They were seers. And so the pharaohs, especially the northern crown king, Remember where Moses was growing up? Oh yeah, northern Egypt. That's what it's symbolized for. So when it's used as a determinative, it's placed at the end of a word instead of the beginning of a word. Interestingly, at the beginning of the word, it's the past tense for a verb in the sentence. And so, if you remember your Bible, in the beginning God created. They're using the past tense. There's no nun before bara. In fact, there's no t for future tense, and there's no I for present tense for the verb. What's going on? Wait a minute. The word before bara is beroshit. T at the end of that one. I wonder if... No, couldn't be. Joseph Smith couldn't have been correct, could he? Exactly. There's no B at the beginning of the Hebrew passage, so it's not beroshit. It's rosh, head, as Joseph Smith said, and therefore the T, which is a grammatical termination for beroshit, is not the grammatical termination for beroshit or roshit. It's because it would be a feminine plural. The female gods, the female heads, that's not what Joseph Smith meant. Because you don't have a identifier for the verb, whether it's past, present, or future. And so there's the T, it's a future. The head, understanding the head God, will bring forth, create. So there you go. That's how Joseph Smith translated Genesis chapter 1, verse 1 from the Hebrew text, biblical Hebrew text, correcting it. He's right. Oh my God, he's a translator after all, but the current church says he's not. Louis Zucker went and gave a lecture at BYU saying Joseph Smith is wrong. The apologists for the church at Farms, when it was called Farms, said Joseph Smith is not a translator, and got humiliated by some guy named Travis Wayne Goodsell when he showed up to John Tvetness's lecture on the Book of Abraham and how it corresponds with other scriptures. And Travis raises his hand at the end and asks the question, doesn't Joseph Smith's translation from the King Follett Discourse support this? Support your lecture that you're giving? See, I'm not being anti. But oops, he exposed himself in public as the Mormons in the audience, which was an overflow audience, so we didn't get to hear the other overflow. All going, yeah. And so, yeah, that's why the church came out with that gospel topic essay on translation and historicity of the Book of Abraham, and said Joseph Smith is not a translator. Yes, he is. Shame on you, Mormons, for getting the church leaders to support that position. That's why Joseph was called a translator. Prophet, seer, revelator, translator. Where is the translator spoken of in conferences when we have a solemn assembly, or when we have the sustaining loyalty oath to the prophets? And we call it a vote. And we went over that. We're not supposed to do that. That's not the process for succession of the church presidents. Section 107, verse 22. So, yeah. So the nun at the end of the sun is the Sun King. Oh, Amun is a sun god who impregnates the queen to give birth to the Sun Prince, who becomes the Sun King to replace his father when his father dies. See what they've done? Now you know. And you're not going to get that from any other scholar. They don't know. They didn't decipher Paleo-Hebrew. I did. Okay. And notice it's a son, a child, a man-child. Remember John in Revelation chapter 12, verse 1, 2, and 5. Which, if you notice the Joseph Smith revision, yeah, they put them in that order. Because they knew. And thus Isaiah, unto us a child is born, unto us a son is given, and upon his shoulders shall be the government. What kind of government back then? Oh, it was a constitutional republic. It was a democracy. Oh, it was communism. Oh, it was fascism. Oh, it was socialism. No! A theocracy. The government Isaiah is talking about is a theocracy. The theocracy shall be upon his shoulders. And that is Melchizedek, which is Amun. I did that in another video. I didn't do that in one. Let me do it here now. Amun. He's the sun god. He is the name that is hidden. In Egyptian, that's what it's understood. And so there are stories where others find out the hidden name of Amun, and they then have magical powers to do things with his name. Remember when we go to the temple, or even baptism, we are willing to take upon ourselves the name of Christ. But we're never told the name of Christ. Then when we go to the temple, we are crowned, anointed, kings and queens. Now we take upon ourselves the name of Christ because we're anointed. We are now Christ. But what is the name? They don't tell us because the church in apostasy refuses to accept that Joseph Smith said it's Amun. And so when you read in the Doctrine and Covenants about the priesthood, or was it in the Book of Mormon? Both talk about it. That before time, it was called the priesthood after the order of the Son of God. No, his name, Amun, the priesthood after the order of Amun. And so Joseph Smith then clarifies and says, and it's now called the priesthood of Melchizedek, out of reverence to the name of Amun, so that it's not mentioned, because it's the hidden name. And so Melchizedek is a long word, king and high priest. That's Amun. And it's Melchizedek is the expanded name title for Amun. We're already in an hour. See, there's so much to talk about. This is just one of the prophecies. I was hoping this could be a series where I go over all of them and cram in everything for like I did already, but I used a different title for the series. And so yes, we'll stop it here. The child Samson. That's the same prophecy as all the other prophecies, referring to sons taking over the kingdom, the tribe, replacing the father, who dies and is succeeded by his son, who is the birthright blessing son. Alrighty. So, by the way, Samson, now that I've revealed the name meaning, Solomon, remember how I said it was redundant to call him King Solomon? It's because the N already identifies him as king. When you call somebody Solomon, you're calling somebody King Salem. Salem is peace, which people associate with Jerusalem. Jeru-Salem. I'm not quite sure what Jeru means, and so people speculate it means New Jerusalem or New Salem. Remember, the latter days, the Christ, is to restore the kingdom of David. The redemption of Zion and New Jerusalem. So Babylon, it's the kingdom versus a man is called the king. Land is called kingdom. It's the kingdom of Babel. And if you're thinking, oh, Babel, that's where the Tower of Babel was, in Ur of Babylon. No, there was a Babel in Lebanon, the cedars of Lebanon, where the Egyptians tell the story of Osiris when he was murdered by his brother, who went to Babel, which was Lebanon, and became a cedar of Lebanon. From which we get Isaiah, Jeremiah, Zechariah talking about this branch as the Christ prophesied. Yeah, it's from the Egyptian. Alrighty. I can't believe this. This takes so long to explain everything when you're speaking to an audience who knows nothing because it's been held back from them. It's been covered up, purposely withheld. So frustrating. Okay. And so we didn't get to it. It's the temple, Bruce. It's the temple of the Philistines that Samson takes down. That's the prophecy. Samson, the Christ in the latter days, the Mormon, is supposed to take down the church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and restore the true church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints that Joseph Smith established. That's the prophecy. A Mormon is supposed to do this. So, man, I was going to save it for when I got to that part of the story, and I had to spoil it for you early, just because it took so long in this video.